Northwest Liberty News, picking the lock on the shackles of tyranny.
Machines are going to fail, and the system's going to fail.
The past is past, the future's now.
Don't look at me. I think these people are completely nuts.
Sometimes trouble just follows a man.
There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus.
Can't you stop your lips from flapping for 2 little minutes?
It's because I'm white.
I'm a man. I'm sensitive. I need to feel loved. I need to be desired.
I'm rapidly becoming a big underground success in this town.
It's a question of methods. Everybody wants results, but nobody wants to do what they have to do to get them done.
And now, coming to you live from Kalispell, Montana, brought to you by Northwest Liberty News, it's Montana Gazette Radio with your host, James White. Okay, so I'm your host, James White. This is Montana Gazette Radio. Thanks for joining me here on this 4th day of December, 2020. And I can't believe it's already the 4th day of December, but it is indeed. The 2020 will be behind us soon. And I think most of us are going to be happy about that. I know I am. Thanks so much for joining me again here. We should be broadcasted on multiple streams here on, let's see, we are now on Podbean, Podbean Live, and also on Facebook, a couple of Facebook pages, a couple of YouTube pages, and Periscope and D Live. So thanks so much for tuning in here, and we are welcome you to any one of those different platforms that you're listening in on now. Okay, we have a returning guest here on the show today, Gene Pringle. This is Freedom Friday. We try to, on Fridays here, we try to divert a little bit from necessarily the local politic angle and talk about some things specifically with Ron Gibson about really about the law and about how about your land contracts and that type of thing. And Gene Pringle is the tax guy, and we have him on alternating Fridays. At least that's the plan, anyway. And this Friday is Gene Pringle. So what we're going to do is we're going to give Gene a call here, and I believe he's going to talk about IRS liens today, if I remember correctly. I spoke to him yesterday. Let me crank this down here. We'll give Gene a call. Hey, Gene, this is Jim White calling from Montana Gazette Radio. You're live on the air. Thanks so much for joining us today, sir.
Hey, good morning, and hope everything's doing well over there.
Everything's doing good here over in Montana. It is, it is chilly, but, what do you expect in December in the Rocky Mountains? So it's still a beautiful place to live, and we're delighted to be broadcasting here from Kalispell, Montana. Gene, you've been on the show before. Thanks so much for joining us here. You are an income tax expert. We've covered so much stuff before. Folks, if you just go on the Northwest Liberty News YouTube channel and type in Gene Pringle, just like it's spelled on the screen there, you will see all the videos that Gene and I have done in the past. Again, like Ron Gibson, they're sort of they're pals, and both of them will give you like a college education if you just listen to what they say, because they really do know the real law, not the administrative law. Not what's legal, they know what's lawful. So with that introduction, Gene Pringle, what are we going to talk about today? And I'll just pretty much turn it over to you.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna talk about these notice of federal tax lien. And I'm sure that there's a lot of listeners out there who probably received one of these notices from the IRS one time or another. And these cause people to go into all kinds of fits and problems. So, but you really have to start looking at it from the standpoint of what are they actually saying and what are they actually alleging that you did. So, in order for a notice of federal tax lien to have any validity, there must be a statutory scheme and a regulation that supports that. So, always the government comes up and says, well, the Internal Revenue Code, okay? The Internal Revenue Code, as we know from California Banks Association versus Schultz, the Internal Revenue Code imposes no duty on anyone to do anything unless it's supported by a regulation. So I want to talk to you about these sections that they use to justify this notice of tax lien. First of all, a lien is an assessment. They say right on the document that there was an assessment made on a certain date. So, assessment authority is under Section 6201 of the Internal Revenue Code. It's called assessment authority, and in 6203 is method of assessment. So, in order for those two statutes to have any validity for Title 26, they must have an enforcing regulation and 26 CFR Part 1 under 6201 or 6203. Now, there's a thing called the Parallel Table of Authorities and Rules. This is published by the Office of the Federal Register. Every agency must publish its enforcing regulations. They can't use regulations published by another agency. They have to publish their own. So when we go to that cross-reference, and this is published, you can get it online. It's called the Parallel Table of Authorities and Rules. So we look at 26 United States Code. This is a 1986 IRC. We go to Section 6201, so 26 USC 6201, and we look over in the right-hand column for the enforcing regulation, and it says 27 Part 70. 27 Part 70 is 27 Code of Federal Regulations Part 70. That is a BATF regulation. It's only enforceable by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. It is not enforceable by the Internal Revenue Service. No Internal Revenue Service agent or officer of any stripe has power to enforce that statute outside of Title 26. So now let's go to this lien and levy authority.
Gene, can you pause for a second? Can I pause you for a second?
Before we get to that, let's go to 6203. This is assessment, the assessment authority. Now, this is method of assessment. So the method of assessment, too, you look at that, 6203 to 6204. Slide across the page. There it is again, 27 Part 70. That tells you flat out that the IRS has absolutely zero authority to assess anybody a tax under 26 USC Section 1. That should be pretty clear. Okay, so now let's go down to this lien levy authority. Where's that found at? It's in 26 USC 6331, and it goes all the way to 6343. This is their authority to lien and levy. A notice of federal tax lien is a lien, or a levy is a levy. I use a levy to seize your property. The notice of lien says that they're going to create a lien. Let's look at their authority in the Parallel Table of Authorities and Rules. Look at that, 6331 to 6343, and you look across the page, it says 27 Part 70. Here again, where is the authority at? The authority is in BATF. The IRS has absolutely no power or delegation of authority to lien or levy anybody for an income tax. Is that plain or and simple?
Wow. Most people don't know that. Most people don't know that, Gene.
Exactly. They don't know it because they're being lied to by people that call themselves professionals.
Wow.
We deal with this every day. So let's dig into this a bit more now, and I want to show you the basis. This is how we defend against this kind of stuff. So we want to look at the factual situation here. If the Internal Revenue Code has no force or effect, we have to go back then to the statutes at large. There's a publication that's put out by Congress, and it's called the Derivations of the Code. So it's a publication that shows all the different code sections and where they originated, where they came from. So it goes back to the 1939 and 1954 codes and shows you where the statute at large is for that code section. So let's set up here. First of all, we want to establish that the Internal Revenue Code is not law, okay? It imposes no duty on anyone to do anything. It's only prima facie evidence of a law. So the official source to find United States law is the statutes at large. The United States Code is only prima facie evidence of such laws. Royer, Inc. versus United States, 265 Fed 2nd, 615. Unless Congress affirmatively enacts title of United States Code into law, that title is only prima facie evidence of the law. Preston versus Heckler, 734 Fed 2nd, 1359, 1984. That the code establishes prima facie the laws of the United States, the very meaning of prima facie being that the code cannot prevail over the statutes at large when the two are inconsistent. Stephan versus United States, 319 U.S. 423, United States versus Weldon, 377 U.S. 95. Okay, so we know that the statutes at large prevail over the code when there's a conflict. So the code must be in harmony with the statutes at large. So the code establishes prima facie what the laws of the United States are, but to the extent that provisions of the code are inconsistent with the statutes at large, the latter will prevail. Best Foods, Inc. versus United States. So now we want to go down here to this publication. The Internal Revenue Code construction to statutes at large must be made by individual section and subsection, since each section and subsection is derived from their own set of statutes at large pamphlet. Joint Committee on Taxation, derivations of the code sections of the Internal Revenue Code of 1933, 1939, and 1954. And this was published January 21st, 1992, U.S. Government Printing Office. I have a complete copy of it. So we refer to this. So let's look at assessment authority. Let's get down to where they're talking about here. Assessment authority rests in Title 26, 6201. That's the authority for assessment. So Section 6201 Internal Revenue Code is derived from Section 3182 of the Revised Statutes of 1874. The type of taxes authorized by Congress to be assessed are described in crystal clarity in the statutes at large enacted December 24th, 1872, Chapter 13, Section 2, Volume 12, page 402, which describes authorized assessment of taxes by the Secretary and apply only to tobacco and distilled spirits. So, is anybody out there making cigarettes, making tobacco products, or are you distilling liquor? Then you're subject to the tax. If you're not doing that, sorry, tax doesn't apply.
Is that right?
The intent of Congress has not changed, as there has been no amendment to the statutes at large to date.
Wow, what a fraud.
So
what a fraud.
When they come up with this crap and they start telling you, oh, all this money, where'd they get this idea from? They put some numbers on a piece of paper and say, oh, well, you owe this amount of tax. You have to pay it before you can challenge it. Hogwash. We have a right. We have rights in this country. We have a constitution. That constitution is a contract between us and the government. And the government's the one that's sworn by oath to support and defend it. But if we don't demand performance under the contract, whose fault is that?
It's ours.
People keep telling you, oh, the Constitution, that's an old outdated piece of parchment. Who cares about that? It's not important anymore. We have statutes now. We have the code. We have statutes. Whoopee! I'm impressed. But those statutes don't mean crap unless they're in compliance with the Constitution.
You know what that reminds?
The case is Marbury versus Madison in 1803.
Exactly.
And it says that any law repugnant to the Constitution is void.
It's void. Yes, Ron's talked about that as well. And Dallas versus Mitchell. I can't remember his Dallas versus Mitchell. I can't remember that one, but he said it so many times. But yeah, I do remember the Marbury versus Madison. That's key. That is key. You are correct.
Yes. So anything that's repugnant to the Constitution is void. So can the government have an income tax? Absolutely. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 authorizes the government to impose duties, imposts, and excises to support the government. What are duties?
That's
import duties, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Duties on imported products coming into the country. That's what Trump put on. Tariffs, put them on Chinese products. Whoopee, I'm glad of that. Then you have imposts. Those are taxes on exports, which the Constitution forbids. Then we have excise taxes. So if the income tax is an excise tax under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, then it's a privilege tax. So who would have to pay the tax? Somebody engaged in some privileged activity. What are privileged activities? They're all covered under BATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. If you're engaged in those activities, that's a privileged activity. What about privileged employment? Is working for somebody at a gas station, or you're working at a manufacturing plant making widgets? Is that privileged employment, or is that a fundamental God-given right? Privileged employment is defined in the Internal Revenue Code and 3121B. That's the Social Security Act. 26 U.S.C. 3121A defines wages. And you'll see there that wages are only paid for employment. Employment is defined in 3121B. Employment takes place within the United States or aboard an American vessel or American aircraft. Is anybody on this call that's listening to this call working aboard an American vessel? That means an American chartered aircraft or an American chartered vessel. In order to do that, you have to be probably in the Merchant Marines.
So that's the only, hold on, let me stop here for a second, Gene. So that's the only definition that counts as you being employed, according to the IRS. The only person that's an employee is someone that works on an
of the Union of States. Go to a case, and I believe it was around 1805. It was called Hepburn and Dundas versus Elsie. That case talks about some citizens of the District of Columbia who were suing people that lived in another state. I believe it was in Virginia. And the court said that the citizens of the district could not file suit against citizens in the state of the American Union. But you read what they said there. If you look at the original Constitution, the word state was always used in its lowercase sense. And in Hepburn and Dundas versus Elsie, the court referred to the capital letter S, state. It said that since the word state in the Constitution referred only to the states of the Union, the District of Columbia is not one of those states. You listen to this scuttlebutt out there to talk about, I want to make the District of Columbia state. If they make the District of Columbia state, they've totally wiped out the Republican form of government we have guaranteed under the Constitution in this country. The District of Columbia cannot be a state. It's not entitled to be a state. It's the seat of government. of the United States of America. It was made that way in order to separate it from the 50 states. There's a case called Downs versus Bidwell in 1901. You should look up that case and read it. It'll give you a good insight as to what Congress's authority is outside the district and inside the district. Inside the district, the Constitution does not apply. Congress can make any law it wants inside the district. If you look at the Social Security tax and the income tax, they are district codes. They were not made for states of the Union. But they want to claim that everybody is a citizen of the United States under the 14th Amendment. Because they used that term in the original Constitution. Actually, in the Articles of Confederation, they referred to citizens in the several states and citizens of the United States.
You know, Gene,
you start reading cases, you'll find out that recently they've ruled that the territorial United States and the several states are all separate. Every state in this union is a separate nation state, and each state has citizens of its own. You may be a Californian, an Oregonian, or a New Yorker, or a Texan, or an Arizona, you know, New Mexican, whatever it is, but you're a citizen of your state. You maintain a domicile in that state. In other words, you have a place of housekeeping there. You're not necessarily a resident. Residency is referred to for corporations. Last time I checked, I'm not a corporation.
You know, Gene, let me pause you for a second here. This reminds me, we talked to Ron last week about the 12 presumptions of the court, where it's all against us when we go into the court. The deck is stacked against us. We're talking here now about the IRS code, about they've actually, you know, through the force of a barrel of a gun, have tricked us into actually paying taxes when we don't even fall under the definition of who they, especially this thing with employer. You're only considered an employer if you're on a ship or a boat or a ship or a plane, for crying out loud. 99.9% of the people are not more than that, are not even included. But they trick you like they trick you.
Exactly. So here's a clue, Jim. Have anybody that's listening to this call, look at your own state statutes. Look up the term employer under state law. Generally, you'll find out it's the state, the county, or the city government. All refers to government. So how can you be subject to employment taxes if you're not engaged in employment?
It's a fraud.
It's all a fraud. Let's go on out of this levy and distraint. We started in it, so I want to get this done so we can open up the call for people to call in. So Section 6331A was derived from the 1954 Code, which was derived from Sections 3310, 3660, 3690, 3692, and 3700 of the 1939 Code. That's right out of Joint Committee on Taxation, Derivations of the Code of 1939 and 54. So Section 3690 is a single identifying section on the species of the tax that can be collected by distraint, and was derived from revised statutes of 1874, Section 3187, and is titled Taxes Collectible by Distraint. The actual statute at large enacted by Congress, which conclusively reveals congressional intent as to taxes authorized to be collected by levy and distraint, was enacted on July 13, 1866, and refers with great specificity only to taxes on cotton and distilled spirits. So if you ain't growing cotton and you ain't making whiskey, you're not subject to the tax. Is that clear?
Why? How come when you go to H&R Block, they don't tell you that, Gene? Why else do the people?
Well, H&R Block are basically what they are. All these tax agencies are using the code to maintain themselves a nice cushy job. They can fill out some papers and make you liable for a tax. They don't read the law or study the law and find out if they actually have to obey that or not. But they just say, well, you're a taxpayer and you received income. You received income. Well, what's income to them? Everything that comes in is income. Ask any bureaucrat. Oh, you mowed somebody's lawn. You got paid $20. Oh, that's income. No, it was compensation for your time of life that you spent mowing the lawn.
Yeah, so if they let people know...
Compensation for personal service has never been taxable income.
So if they let people know about this, they're out of business. If they let people know what the real truth is, H&R Block goes out of business at that point because they don't have any customers.
All these tax agencies go out of business. They can do taxes for corporations. The corporation has a duty to pay a tax.
Right.
Because that's what the 1909 Tax Act was. It was a tax on corporate profits. But income is defined as profit or gain derived from some privileged activity. Get you out of Black's Law Dictionary and look up the word income, and you'll see that it says profit or gain. Well, is there profit in your labor? Absolutely not, in exchange of your time of life. You spent your time of life out there.
Right. Exactly.
You exerted your time and your money. You had to buy your clothes. You got to put a roof over your head. You have all these family expenses and stuff that you had to take care of in order to provide that labor. If you starve yourself, you can't eat, you don't have a roof over your head, living outside in the cold, how much work can you get done in a day? People that are tired and hungry and weak cannot do much work. So we go out and we work our buns off. We put a roof over our head. We put food in our belly. We try to do something and get ahead and make a better life for ourselves. That's not a taxable event. Sorry, government. You get to take a back seat here. That's my God-given right that falls under the 9th Amendment.
All right, we're going to take a quick break right now, Gene. We're going to take a quick break here for commercial. We come back on the other side. We'll open up the chat room for questions for Gene. We don't have phone coverage today, but we'll take a quick 2-minute break here, and we come back on the other side. We can take your questions, get your questions ready, send them into the chat room. I put a link there to the Podbean broadcast, so you can ask questions there as well. We'll be back after these brief messages. Gene, before we go to break, Gene, tell us real quick where your website.
Montana this morning, radio show.
Okay, so he's on another call. We'll put Gene on.
But we're taking a 2-minute break for advertising.
Okay, so let me put him on hold here, and then we'll be back in a minute. Let's see. All right, folks, we'll be back after these brief messages here on Montana Gazette Radio. If you like classic cars, exceptional service, and a money-back guarantee, then the Corner Shop in beautiful downtown Kalispell is the place for you. Whether it's an oil change, engine diagnostic, suspension work, or brakes all around, the Corner Shop has you covered. With expert technicians and a free consultation on all services, you can't go wrong with the Corner Shop. Did I mention the classic cars? While you're waiting for your expert service to be performed, take a stroll through the showroom to see Kalispell's smoothest collection of classic cars. The Corner Shop is conveniently located at 1212 South Main, just south of the courthouse. The Corner Shop is open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m., so drop by for an appointment or call 755-7777. That's 755-7777. The Corner Shop, Kalispell's full-service auto repair facility.
Have you heard of Protovite? The most common health concern today is poor digestive health. Unlike ordinary supplements, Protovite is a liquid multi-nutrient formula with patent-pending absorption technology. A published scientific study proves that Protovite is nutrition that gets in 100% of the time. Protovite uses the highest quality ingredients to rapidly nourish every cell in your body.
My name is Sandra. 6 weeks ago, when I started taking Protovite, I was on 14 medications, from everything for blood pressure to fibromyalgia. In the first 10 days, my blood sugar dropped 50 points, and my fibromyalgia pain is gone. And so was 12 of the 14 medications that I was taking.
Protovite, nutrition that gets in. Buy Protovite now.
Thank you, Protovite, for giving my life back.
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Work with your doctor when taking medications. Make Protovite part of your healthy lifestyle.
Okay, folks, if you want to support this broadcast, you can do so by going to bloodboost.net. That's bloodboost.net. And if you haven't taken the 1 month Protovite challenge, you really might want to consider doing that. Just try it for a month. Take it every day. It's great stuff. The highest quality ingredients formulated by Bill Downs, who's been a guest on the show numerous times. And every product there on bloodboost.net helps support your immune system, which is a key certainly here in the wintertime. But overall, in general, having a strong immune system is going to help keep a lot of the disease away. If you want to support this program otherwise, you can go to northwestlibertynews.com. That's northwestlibertynews.com, and click on the Support Independent News button there. You can go to Patreon and become a Patreon. Or if you can just hit the like button and share the video around, that'd be greatly appreciated. You can visit MontanaDailyGazette.com, now the #1 online news website in Montana. And we'll be putting out a lot of truth there. We appreciate your support there. And we're going to get back here to Gene Pringle, our guest today, Gene Pringle, who is tax expert. Let's bring Gene back on the line here and resume the call. Gene, are you with us? Thanks for hanging on after the break.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I was saying, we are joined by Gene Pringle, who is an income tax expert. Gene, give us out your website here. I meant to do that. I think you picked up a call right before the break there. Give us out your website where people can go learn more about you and can use your consulting.
Yeah, it's uncommonconsultant.org. Uncommonconsultant.org. And I have another website called uncommonconsultantllc.com. So there's 2 websites that are available, but uncommonconsultant.org is the main site.
And what kind of stuff, if they go to uncommonconsultant.org, what kind of stuff can they find there, Gene? I know that you offer your services to help people that get IRS letters and that type of stuff.
Stuff that they can purchase. There's stuff that they can purchase on the website. They can purchase consulting time. They can get consulting time for if they have a problem. They can also purchase a limited liability company there. So we have different packages available there, and there'll be more added as we go along here.
What about these companies, Gene, that we hear? What about these companies we always hear around tax time? If you owe $10,000 on your taxes, call us and we'll help you out and we'll help you get yourself all straightened out. You know what I'm talking about, right? You've seen these commercials. What's their angle, Gene?
It's called an offer and compromise. What they want to do is they call up the IRS and say, "Look, we got this guy on the phone here. We're working with him, and he wants to make a deal. So we're going to set him up. We're going to help him out. If he files all of his tax returns, what are you going to do for him?" Well, if he'll file all of his back returns, he'll have to pay some taxes and some penalties. We'll put on time payments, and we'll work with him, and we'll reduce it down. We'll cut it down to 50% what it is. But with taxes and penalties, it'll be up in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they'll be paying on it for the rest of their lives, and their children will be paying on it. They're going to pay it off. It's a crock. If you're not engaged in a revenue taxable activity that makes you subject to the income tax, why would you do that? If you have not filed tax returns based on what you believe that you didn't have taxable income, you have a perfect defense.
Well, Gene, most people
I don't believe the revenue that I receive or my earnings are taxable income under the code. Can you please show me the statute and regulation that makes me liable for that tax?
Well, people just go
don't back off from that.
People go into work, Gene. They just go into their employer and they sit down and fill out the tax forms, and they just think that if they have to work, there, they say the first day on a job, you got to fill all this stuff out, and you can't even work unless you do it. So it's kind of
This is the great con game that was orchestrated by the 1942 Victory Tax Act. They put in a wage tax. They called it a tax on wages. However, if you looked at that code section and looked at what it said, they exempted those people in states of the Union that were working for another non-resident alien individual, a foreign partnership, or a foreign corporation that was not engaged in a trade or business within the United States. It takes a little study to understand this stuff. But if we're living in a state of the Union, aren't we a non-resident of the district?
Yes, right.
Are we not individual citizens under the Constitution?
Yes, right.
Hence, non-resident alien individual. We're non-resident aliens to the district. So when you look at that and say, well, working for another non-resident alien, would that be my next door neighbor mowing his lawn, or working for some roofing company or something? Would I be an employee engaged in employment? It's a con game to get more people paying into the welfare state.
And they just steal all that money.
The only employer
Steal
listed in the code
money, man.
in Oregon is the state, county, and city governments. Those are employers. You look in the tax code and the regulations, an employer must have at least 4 individuals engaged in employment in his company in order to be an employer. Well, how can a guy that has 10 employees out here be an employer if he doesn't have at least 4 of those people engaged in employment within the United States or aboard an American vessel or aircraft?
That sounds so funny.
Open your eyes, read the law. Let's get in tune here.
Man, what a scam. What a scam. I can't believe it.
It's a scam. It's a total scam. It's been a scam since the beginning.
Ugh.
The 16th Amendment authorized Congress to enact an income tax and tax income derived from sources. So, what's the source of tax in your state? Call up the Revenue Department and ask them for a list of the taxable sources in your state and see what they tell you. Oh, you'd have to go read the tax statutes for that. No, I don't. I'm not required to go read musty law books. It's the duty of government to inform the citizen of what the law is. And if the government can't inform you what the law is, then there is no law. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Don't call me, I'll call you.
And you know, Gene, what you see right now across the country with this voting, where people are standing up, they're going into, they're testifying before Congress. We need to do that with the whole tax thing as well. That's what we need to do. People need to be outraged and realize they've not only stolen our votes, they've stolen our money.
That's what we're trying to do, is start a movement here of informed people who are standing up and telling the government to go pound sand in a rat hole, leave my earnings alone. Look up the term earnings. It's published. 28 U.S.C. 3002, number 6. Read what it says about earnings. Earnings may be denominated as wages, salary, commission, bonuses, or otherwise. How big a diesel truck can you drive through otherwise?
Yeah, right on, huh?
And it includes periodic payments under a retirement program. Duh. So if that retirement program was purchased by your earnings, why would you pay a tax on that? We're supposed to be able to retire in dignity. Every citizen has a right to put away money for that purpose. Stay away from these IRAs and 401ks that are made for government employees. You don't need one of those. Set up your own retirement program. Put money into it. Fund it. Let it grow. And take it out when you retire.
Folks, if you have a question for Gene Pringle, go ahead and type it in. We don't have the phone coverage today. Go ahead and type it in the chat room if you'd like on YouTube, or you can go to the chat room. I put the link to the Podbean podcast. You can go and type a question in there if you'd like. Gene, here's the question, I guess. I mean, you know, if you're fresh out of college right? You just got your degree, and you get the local, your biggest employer in your town calls you up because you got good grades and they want to hire you, and you show up there. But you're so smart that you know the law, like what you're talking about, and you know that it's fraud. Is there any way that you can? I mean, the average employer doesn't have any clue what we're talking about. They basically act as agents of the IRS, don't they? They kind of act like de facto agents of the IRS by taking your money before you even receive it. They take it before you even receive it and give it to the feds.
They always ask you to say, well, you're going to be an employee for us here, and we have to take withholding out. We have to do that. So you have to fill out a W-4. Download the W-4 and read the instructions. In the upper left-hand corner, it starts out with exempt. How to file exempt. If you know that your earnings are not taxable income under the law, and that's what you're doing, you're receiving money in exchange for personal services that you are rendering to somebody for payment, those are called earnings. Your earnings are not taxable. So you fill out the form exempt. They'll say, put in your name and social security number over here, and fill out this and write exempt down here. When you do that, you can fill out that W-4 every quarter. You can do a new W-4. As long as it's before the last day or the end of the quarter, you can file a new W-4. But the thing is, you file a W-4. At the end of the year, your employer issues you a W-2. It says, oh, I paid you all these wages. Okay? You know that you were paid earnings called wages. That's what they are. They're earnings. And if you look at 26 CFR 861-8T, it will tell you that those things under the Constitution that are not taxable by the federal government do not have to be reported.
Repeat that again. What was that again? Repeat that one more time. Go ahead. Go over that again, please.
26 CFR 861-8T. And I think you'll find it around 2D. But you read it, you'll see it there. And it gives 4 examples. Examples are not things that are exempt, they're things that are taxable. It's really clever the way they write these statutes. It's a lot of doublespeak. So while we're waiting for that, I'm going to give you another statute you can look at. This is 26 CFR 601.106, 1 in parentheses, and then Rule 1. Which says, an exaction by the U.S. government which is not based upon law, statutory or otherwise, is a taking of property without due process of law in violation of the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Accordingly, an appeals representative in his or her conclusions of fact or application of the law shall hew to the law and the recognized standards of legal construction. So when you look at what we just went through, regarding 6201 and 6331, what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to hew to the law, right? And the law says they don't have any authority to do what they're doing. Houston, do we have a problem? It's called failure to launch. They get away with this stuff because the people
It's called ignorance.
would rather sit in front of the boob tube and have a 6-pack of beer instead of looking at the law and maybe learning something a little bit and taking the time to stand up for their own rights. I'm so happy that so many people are standing up over this phony election that we just had and demanding accountability. And that's what we need to do with the IRS. We need to demand accountability. We need to demand accountability from these courts and these judges. Those people, those judges, are no different than we are. But they have a duty. They swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution. Their duty is to protect the rights and property of the people. That's the first duty of government. So when you go into the court, if you don't know what you're doing, you say blah, 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 you don't know what you're doing, don't know what you're talking about, you don't understand the law, and you want to make some wild argument out here about something, then they can walk all over you. You have to understand your rights. You have to understand what the Constitution is. The Constitution is a contract. It's enforceable under statutes of fraud. It's a contract between we, the people, and the government. It tells the government exactly what it can do and what it can't do. The Bill of Rights are further restrictions on the power of government. The Second Amendment says you flat out, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What part of infringed don't you understand, people? You come around and say, I can't have this, or I can't have that, or I can't own this rifle, or I can't have that rifle because it fires semi-automatic, or I got 20 rounds in a magazine, and you want to make that illegal. You don't have that authority, government. And the people cannot vote away the rights of the other people.
Yeah, good point.
If there's 350 million people in this country, 349,999,999 cannot vote away the rights of that one citizen. They can vote all they want in their beautiful democracy, but they can't vote on our rights.
Just disregard them and trample them is what they do. They just don't. It doesn't even matter. And you brought up a good point too. That is, how come someone hasn't sued the federal government for breach of contract? Because that's what it is. If there's a contract between us and the federal government, they breach it often, daily.
That's right. Well, because people don't know and don't understand the law. They don't know how to protect their rights. We're American citizens. We're entitled to a liberal interpretation of the Constitution in our favor. We're the clearly intended and specifically designated beneficiaries of the Constitution. We didn't write it. Our forefathers wrote it. But it was intended for us. We're the clearly intended and specifically designated beneficiary. But we're not exercising our rights. We want to let somebody else do it. Well, you go ahead, you give it a shot, and then I'll see how you do. If it works out good for you, I'll give it a try. Even God will condemn a coward.
Yeah, that's one of the things we need, Gene. We need courage in this country. That's what we need. We need men to stand up with courage and
yes.
stand up against the tyranny.
Americans stand up. We're fighters.
We used to be a lot more fighting, have a more fight spirit than we do now. I think that's coming back some, but we lost some of it.
Then we have these idiots out here now that want to put skirts on men and jeans on girls to make boys out of girls and girls out of boys.
Well, we're not against women wearing jeans here, but I know what your point. I get your point.
Well, I'm not against women wearing jeans. Don't mind it at all.
No, your point. I know your bigger point. I know your larger point.
As long as they're still girls wearing them jeans.
Yeah, man. I tell you, it's crazy times.
Let's get back to taxes.
Let's get back to taxes. Indeed. Let's get back to taxes. So, is your thought, Gene, that President Trump is talking about doing some tax reforms? I think he's no fan of the IRS. We saw how the IRS was used, as a weapon against conservatives, the Tea Party people. I gotta believe Trump's. He's a pretty smart guy. I gotta believe he knows what's going on with the IRS and that they're criminals. Do you think?
I'm sure he does. I'm sure Donald Trump has a great knowledge of the Internal Revenue Code and how the government is perverting it for gain.
I think we're going to see some action. That's the thing. Is that going to be
right?
You
don't get anything. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you're not willing to make some noise and go out there and do something, then nothing's going to happen. If you want to go along to get along, you're going to get just exactly what you deserve for going along to get along.
Yeah. Well, I see. I see. Here's what I see, Gene. I don't see just awakening over these votes. I see the awakening coming on the criminal IRS, the criminal, medical corporations, the criminal pharmacological corporations, the criminal banks, the criminal, learning institutions. I think all of this information, once the dike blows, all this scam, all this fraud is all going to come out. We're going to see that it's all been a fraud. We've been conned for generations and generations, each and every one of us, Gene, not just in taxes.
You're still being conned.
Sure.
This COVID-19 is a con job.
Sure, of course it is.
Yeah, there's a virus out there. Is it deadly? Yes, in certain people with pre-existing conditions, it's highly deadly. But they come out and said right in the beginning that there was a prophylactic that you could take that would guard against it and help you. And those people who took that and went on that protocol, they didn't go on ventilators. They didn't die. They survived it. They're telling you right now, if you take vitamin D and take zinc, take vitamins that'll help your body resist the virus, you may not even catch it.
No, it's true. It's true. And even if you do, it's a 99.59% success rate.
They want to wait for something to go get a magic shot in the arm, and it's going to be the fix-all, cure-all. Well, I don't take vaccines. I haven't taken a flu shot since 1963.
Wow.
Very seldom catch the flu. If I do, I have it maybe 1 or 2 days and it's gone.
Yeah, right.
So I can give a rip about their flu. I'll take care of it. Yeah. Between God and me.
That's right. That's right. Uncommonconsultants.org. Uncommonconsultants.org. Folks, before we close out the show here, if there's any questions for Gene, go ahead and throw them in the chat room. Let me go over here and check the Podbean podcast here to see if there's any questions over there. Let's see. Somebody has joined, but I don't know if they're asking questions. If you got a question for Gene before we come to the end of the show here, again, go ahead and just type that in the chat room there, and we'd be happy to ask him about it. Gene, what are you working on now? I know you're always working on something. You're always working on something to expose the corruption and to educate the folks. What's been your main focus? I know you travel around the country. I don't know if you travel around the country. I know you travel and do seminars. Do you go across the country, or do you stick pretty much around there, around up here in the Northwest?
No, we go to other places too and do seminars. But we'll put on a seminar anywhere where there's a group of people that want to listen. But I offer a jump drive too. It's a seminar drive. It actually has a seminar on a jump drive, so it's a 64 gigabyte flash drive. You can purchase that off of the website. So it's $350. It's the same price as going to a seminar. It's not exactly the same experience because you're not able to ask a question there. But the nice thing about the flash drives, you can pause it and you can stop and look up the statute or regulation that we're talking about and read it for yourself. If you really want to understand the law, you've got to go and read the law. Don't listen to what somebody tells you the law is, because how do you know they're telling you the truth?
Well,
go back to the word lawyer. The root word for lawyer is liar. So get over it. And understand that the government, if it's moving its lips, it's lying to you.
Yeah, no kidding, man.
They hire thousands of people and teach them how to lie to the people, to misrepresent the truth. If the government told you the truth about the income tax, you wouldn't pay it because it's voluntary. If it's voluntary, how can they coerce you into paying it? I mean, how big of a hammer do we have to hit ourselves in the head with to get it? If the income tax is 100% voluntary and the liquor tax is 100% enforced, what can they enforce? The liquor tax. They can't enforce the voluntary tax because you cannot be punished for doing a voluntary act.
I'm still trying to get around the whole I'm not an employee unless I'm working on a plane or a boat. I mean, that right there, Gene.
Well, or you're working within the District of Columbia. And in order to be an employee in the District of Columbia, you have to be engaged in some privileged occupation. It's called employment.
Jeez.
Go read the Title 5 United States Code where it talks about government employees. 5 U.S.C. 2105. Start reading what it says there and understand that somebody who has a Social Security number, they're in the they're classified as in a special service. Some kind of accepted service, special service. But if you have that number, you're there. So you have a Social Security number that entitles you to disability or retirement pay. It's a government program. Who paid into it? You do, and your employer. In financial parlance, it's called a defined benefits program. You have to pay in a certain amount in order to get a certain amount out. If you don't pay in, you don't get anything out. Some people don't qualify for Social Security because they didn't pay in.
Yeah.
But it's a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
What happens when enough people figure out that they don't have to pay in and they stop paying in? It's not mandatory. It's not even mandatory to get the number. If you don't want the number, you can get rid of it. It's called an SA 521.
Gene, we're just coming to the end of the show here. Give out your website one more time. It's Uncommon. I'll give it Uncommon Consultant.
Uncommonconsultant.org.
Uncommonconsultant.org.
Consultant.org. O-R-G. All lowercase. Just spell it out. Comes up every time.
Check it out, folks. I'll put it in the chat room here after Gene leaves here. Uncommonconsultant.org. Gene Pringle, always great to have you on here.
And if you know, during this COVID thing, we can't do seminars, but you can go on the website and purchase that flash drive. That's a seminar drive. It has all the information on it. We go through all these statutes and regulations and show you the truth about the employment taxes and where they're applicable and who is required to pay them. And it's certainly not the American people.
And there's nothing wrong with someone buying one of those flash drives and getting a couple of their buddies together and sitting around watching it and talking about it and discussing it and asking questions about it.
Heck yes.
You encourage that, right?
Get a big screen and plug it in and have some of your friends over and sit there and have a COVID experience.
There you go, folks. If you get 10 of your friends together, everybody get 10 of your friends together, everybody kick in $40 for the flash drive and popcorn. You guys can have a college education for pretty cheap. You know, and
10 or less, and remember to wear your mask.
Yeah,
social
right on.
distance.
Yeah, yeah, right on. Gene Pringle, always great to have you on the broadcast, my friend. Uncommonconsultant.org, uncommonconsultant.org, and if the creek doesn't rise, we'll see you in 2 weeks back here on the same time. Thanks again, Gene. Appreciate you being here, my friend.
All right. Everybody have a great day, a great week out there.
All right, brother. You too. Take care, man. Bye now.
All right. Bye now.
All right, folks, there goes Gene Pringle. And the stuff that he puts out here, folks, is just plain gold. It's just gold. I mean, I got to stop sometimes and go back over, which I will do today, and probably release something here this weekend, maybe pull out some excerpts. But, I mean, the guy just puts out so much information, I can't hardly wrap my mind around some of these. I still just can't get over that. You're not even an employee unless you're on a plane or a boat. And other things that he had stated that like I said, I'll have to go back and play the tape. Sorry that if you're watching now and you got cut off the other feed, this is the second time in a row that this software has just stopped working and frozen in the middle of a program. I think there's been an update, automatic update, which I don't have turned on, but some update I think has happened, and it's causing problems with my my production software. So I'll have to take a look at that, look at the logs and see what went on. But we so much appreciate Gene Pringle being here on the show. You can support this broadcast by going to northwestlibertynews.com, northwestlibertynews.com. And what I'm moving towards next week is trying to start doing the 15-minute news breaks. I'm going to have to sign up. I'm going to get a couple of different accounts here for the Blog Talk. And going to be doing like 15-minute news breaks here coming up next week. That's the goal. I'm going to create those accounts this weekend. So a lot of work ahead of me. Be publishing a couple articles on the Montana Daily Gazette here in the next few days. So we certainly appreciate you looking in here on the broadcast. We're just out of time here. northwestlibertynews.com, northwestlibertynews.com. Support Gene Pringle and his efforts over at uncommonconsultant.org. That's uncommonconsultant.org. And, it's not a bad idea for that little thumb drive. If you get, 10, 12, 15 people together, it's going to be pretty cheap for everybody to get it and everybody sit around in a room or, a theater room or something and watch that. Ron Gibson will be on next Friday. Freedom Fridays. We're going to continue to keep that going here because we're trying to get down to, there's two, as I stated before in the show, folks, there's things that are legal and things that are lawful. And we want to, of course, always highlight the things that are lawful. Legal is sort of more of administrative because the codes and the regulations, if they violate, he stated it here in the show, Marbury versus Madison. If any code or any other sort of proclamation or mandate violates the Constitution, then it's void. It's void, and that's already been laid down as Supreme Court precedent. So, like Gene said numerous times, folks, if you don't know your rights, the other side, look what they're doing here. I mean, come on. You see what's going on with the voting. You see what's going on with the scamming and the cheating and the lying and it's all a fraud. It's all a fraud. And the only reason they continue the fraud is because people don't stand up and tell them you're crooks. You're criminals. Stop. No one does that. They just keep on going. And especially if people, as I stated before, they see these masks and 90% of the population putting on masks, and then the ones that are not are getting, hassled by the 90%, the 10% that aren't. They see this. You don't think they notice this? They're standing laughing at us. They're laughing at us. They're laughing. Believe me. The establishment laughs at the common folks because they have captured us so, almost completely. Almost completely. Again, it says on the box, on the box for the mask, does not protect against COVID-19. On the box. Yet people are calling 911 in some places because the person is not wearing it. Yeah. We got a long way to go. Long way to go, I'm afraid, before we're able to take this country back. And the first step is taking off the damn mask. Thanks for looking in here on the broadcast. We're just out of time. Montana Gazette Radio.com, MontanaDailyGazette.com, NorthwestLibertyNews.com. Till next time, James White from Montana Gazette Radio saying bye now.